Well, I'm not sure now that any introduction is required, but it's my great pleasure to welcome Ro Allen here this morning. So my research tells me that Ro is self-described as the accidental commissioner. At 19 or 20 years of age, she was a new youth worker in Shepparton, and Ro became an advocate for gender-diverse young people, establishing Victoria's first rural support group for young LGBTIQ people, and quickly grasping the bigger picture of the need statewide. Ro has held this community advocacy together with long involvement and commitment to the church, working with the Synod Youth Ministry team in the Uniting Church, as well as positions in the Victorian Council of Churches as project officer and representing the National Council of Churches at a Christian Congress in Asia. Ro was founding CEO of Uniting Care Cutting Edge. Ro has held leadership positions in community and government sectors, been a member of Victorian Government LGBTIQ ministerial advisory groups, and chaired Ministerial Advisory Committee on LGBTIQ health and wellbeing between 2007 and 2009. Ro is a former chair of Adult Community and Further Education Board, the Victorian Skills Commission and Youth Affairs Council of Victoria. Ro has been recognised for extensive community service. In 2003 with a Centenary Medal, and 2009 was inducted into the Victorian Government Honour Roll for Women. In 2015, Ro was appointed as Victoria's first Gender and Sexuality Commissioner and was recently recognised in the top 50 public sector women in Victoria 2017. Ro has not shied away from sharing personal stories and experiences with accuracy and humour, and we look forward to hearing some of these today as Ro shares her professional experiences and hopes for the future. I just wonder if we need to remind Ro that this conference finishes at lunchtime tomorrow. And there are some other speakers as well, so I welcome Ro Allen to the stage.
Oh, too funny, too funny. In fact, this morning I woke up and did take a few slides out because I was a bit worried about my dream. Anyway, it's just an absolute pleasure to be with you here this morning. How does that get up onto the big screen? F5. Look at that, magic. Can I also acknowledge, before I begin, that we meet on Gadigal land, and I pay my respects to Aboriginal people that may be with us, elders past and present. I'm really very lucky to represent a Victorian government that's working on treaty in Victoria. And we've got a long way to go, and we've got a lot to do, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And another thing I'm very proud to be able to have done in Victoria is set up the first LGBTI Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Pride Network. And they, with their permission, I also like to recognise my own elders as they've taught me to do. So at this time I like to recognise the elders within the lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender diverse and intersex community, because there wouldn't be a Victorian Commissioner without the work of my elders as well. And we've recently added the black and brown colours to our rainbow flag in Victoria, and you might see a bit more of that. That's to acknowledge the First People and multicultural communities. So I do have a slide presentation. There's a couple of caveats. I have certainly focused on the themes wherever I can, and we'll be able to pull out some references, hopefully, to creation spirituality as we go along. I should also say that I take my job very seriously. I don't take myself too seriously. So I've been told that humour is okay in this crowd, and I've also been assured to go hard or go home, and that you're all up for a bit of a challenge. And if you're not challenged, then I'm not trying hard enough. Is that fair? Very good, very good. Excellent, excellent. So I think, when I was reflecting and putting this together, I was looking at this slide thinking, wow, God's really saying to us that God cannot be boxed, cannot be labelled. So the first thing I thought I'd do is better explain all the labels that we use. Because we do like to put labels on things. I don't know about you, but the alphabet's getting longer every time I turn around. Am I right? LGBTIQ, A+, everything else. If you don't know, add a plus, people. That's my hit suggestion of the day. But you do look like a very clued-in, queued-up crew, and I also believe that you've had a little bit of 101 in this conference already. So. Around gender diversity. So I identify as a non-binary, gender fluid person myself. I'm really happy with she pronouns. I get he a lot, I get they. If you don't know somebody with they or them pronoun yet, I suspect you will in the next 5 years. It's pretty much like in the 60s and 70s when if you didn't know a gay or lesbian person, you certainly hopefully do know one now, or at least have heard one publicly speaking. You will certainly meet and know more trans and gender diverse folk as we become more comfortable in coming out. So lesbian and gay, bisexuality is often misunderstood, but basically if you understand gender on a continuum and what we understand as feminine in one end and masculine in another, somebody who's bisexual now could be bi plus or pan, which is pansexual, short for pansexual, is someone that's attractive. So bisexual is someone who's attracted to both genders. Okay, sexually, romantically. Doesn't mean they have multiple relationships or anything like that. They might, but pansexual means you can be attracted to anybody on that continuum. And as I've already said, I'm sort of on that continuum myself at any time. Transgender is somebody who is allocated female at birth, so that's the language we use. Allocated female at birth, grew up and is a man and has transgendered or transitioned to live full-time in the male masculine, okay? Or somebody who's allocated male at birth, grows up and is a woman, and who lives full-time as a woman is transgender. A broader term than that now is trans and gender diverse, which is anybody on that continuum at any point. Some people may use hormones to transition, some people may not. There's a whole continuity in that. Cisgender is really just somebody who has been allocated female at birth and grows up and is a woman, or allocated male at birth and grows up and is a man. And I often get people say, Commissioner, why do we need that? Well, we have homosexual and heterosexual. We also need transgender diverse. We don't want to say normal, we want to say cisgender. So now you can go home and change your Facebook settings, okay? You've learnt something. I never might have presumed, but the majority of the world is still cisgender. I always say, homosexual until proven straight in my world, but in everybody else's world it's probably a little different. Intersex, somebody said to me the other day, thank you for explaining this, I always thought the intersex meant they were into sex. No. No, people, no. In Victoria, anyway, 1 in 100,000 people have an intersex variation. So somebody who's born both male and female chromosomes, not to be confused with someone who's trans and gender diverse, but at birth. So in Victoria, and I can only talk for Victoria, we're still doing surgeries on intersex infants. We're still giving babies testosterone injections in 3 months to try and, normalise, as they say, gender. Now, I think that... big call, but I think gender will be a fairly non-issue into the future. But at the moment, we still live in a very, very binary male-female world. And even as an advocate, I say, yes, you do need to gender the child. It's very hard for a family to have a child that's not, identified as male or female. What we don't need to do is the invasive surgeries on that child until that child can tell us what gender they are. So there's a lot of work we're doing in Victoria in that space. The alphabet does go on. Recently I added the Q. It was very controversial. Queer is a term that many of our community has re-engaged as their identity, but often for seniors or elders in our community, it's still a very harsh word they grew up. It's a very derogatory word. So many of my elders really don't like the word Q, so I always say to people, if you're working in the aged care sector, you can choose the Q or not use the Q, but always be aware of where it comes from. So every time I use the Q, I do acknowledge that it comes from a very hurtful place. But if you are under the age of 30, queer really is been, lesbian and gay is kind of very old school, and queer is the much more inclusive term. So people have queer gender, queer sexuality, and just generally identify as queer. Still all with me? That's good. There's some nodding. That's good. So let's just get right into it. Sex, sexuality and gender. These things often get conflated together. So, you know, sex is really, with someone with an intersex variation, sex is really important around, you know, the what you're born with. Sexual orientation is who you're actually attracted to, and of course gender is how you identify. And those three things are really very, very different. So, you know, I should have just said, you know, just to be really clear, for example, a gay man is allocated male at birth, he grows up, he's a man, he's cisgender, he just is homosexual. You know, your sexuality and your gender identity is completely different. Pronouns, you know, I think the key with pronouns is to not assume. I think we walk through the world with all sorts of unconscious biases, and we decide what somebody's gender is. We don't actually stop and ask. And you know, that's how we, you know, that's how we have operated. But I think, as I've said, in the future it will be different. I think when you purposely misgender someone because they don't pass as the gender they are trying to pass at, that's obviously just plain rude. If you get it wrong, and I have got it wrong before, the Commissioner for Gender and Sexuality has mispronounced someone, polite to just apologise and move on. As I've said, you can't get my pronoun wrong. I've just answered to everything. My community, you know, my favourite pronoun, of course, is Commissioner. It's gender neutral, works. I always say I'm going to have to pick one when this gig's up, but it's not like president. You don't become the president forever. You don't stay commissioner forever. But, you know, I actually don't hear it often. I don't hear it. And it's quite useful when I get pronoun he when you want to go buy a car. Not so useful, I'll tell you that, ladies, it's quite useful. But it's not that useful when you're at the doctor's. Anyway, pronouns are difficult. I have a lot of English teachers just tell me grammatically they can't get their head around they. Bad luck, people. Somebody said to me on radio, can you change that, Commissioner? Can you make something that's more grammatically correct? I said, well, I would like to think I had that much power, but this is a global phenomenon. You know, again, like all good things, not. It's come out of America, and it seems to be the one. There are other variations of gender-inclusive pronouns, but they and them seems to be the one that most have stuck with. And just to keep you on your toes, there are so many variations. You can't think that, you know, LGBTIQ is it. Bigender, pangender, transmasc, boy, BOI is another identity. AFAB and AMAB, that's allocated female at birth, allocated male at birth, androgynous. There's so many. Walker, you know, Fefafini. Fefafini is Polynesian, and there's, you know, two spirits, three genders. You know, somebody who, and I think they've got a few Americans here, someone who identifies as two-spirit is generally a native Indian. And, you know, a two-spirit person, so gender-neutral person, was seen in a village as their spiritual leader, as has lots of wisdom, as their shaman. I like to think of myself as a two-spirit person. But, you know, and a walker, somebody who walks between two genders. And there's incredible amount of power and privilege in doing that. And I can walk into a group, any group of people, and connect in a way that has a lot of power. And I do acknowledge that. And there are so many different diversities, and I think that's the key of the brilliance. So why did Victoria appoint a commissioner? Well, we have a commissioner for a lot of things, but it's really important, again, that our community is celebrated as well. And often people say, look, there's nothing to see here, Commissioner, we just treat everybody equally. You know, service providers, churches, schools. And really what they're telling me is that we just treat everybody as cisgender and heterosexual. So, and we know that not everybody starts from the same playing field. Our relationships, well, we're certainly around, and you wouldn't know it by the census. You're only collected on the census if you're in a relationship. So you actually have to be, as a homosexual person, you have to be in a relationship to be counted, which is still a bit crazy. So single people aren't counted, and we're starting to get some more data, but of course there's lots of people that are still afraid to fill in the census because of the discrimination and stigma as well. But we also have many of our community that are doing well, but some of us who aren't. Excuse the, if anyone does have OCD, the typo in that, but basically our anxiety and depression and suicidation is higher than heterosexual and cisgender, enormously higher. And so is our alcohol use and a whole range of indicators. It's really important to stress, as I do every time I talk about this. It's not our gender identity and our sexuality. It's the discrimination and stigma that we experience that are the cause of these things. In fact, next week I'll be delivering evidence at the Royal Commission into Mental Health in Victoria, because I was summoned to that because the Royal Commission understand that our community is so prominent users of mental health services. We've got marriage equality in Victoria, and you know, we could do an hour just on that really, and the journey there. But you know, this is 2018 stats. Everything hasn't been fixed. In fact, we've created generational pain through the postal survey, which I'll talk about more. There isn't really very many of us that haven't experienced some kind of verbal or physical abuse or assault. So what are we doing about it in Victoria? I thought I'd just spend the next section just talking a bit about this. We have a whole of government task force. We have, you know, it's very government, so everything runs to a committee. And it's the first time in Victoria we've had an intersex advisory group, a trans-specific. I think there's times when the advocacy we need to work as a whole alphabet, but then there's particular issues for particular letters of the alphabet that we need to do work on. We have a Minister for Equality. He's fantastic. He's male, white, heterosexual, cisgender, perfect to push out with all of his privileges when I need him. He's absolutely brilliant. He's terrific, but he really understands the issues, which is fantastic. And as a result, we've done an enormous amount of legislation reform in Victoria that have been, you know, the adoption equality, 13 years that took in Victoria for us to get equality in those spaces. And as I've said, we've got marriage equality, but it's certainly not the last thing. I am going through this quite quickly. Clearly my dream has had an impact. And I'm talking fast, but I will slow down. And you can also get a copy of any of these presentations, any slides that you want. So we are reintroducing the Births, Deaths and Marriages Bill. That was incredibly traumatic in the last term of the Andrews government. We lost that bill by one vote, and that would have made life a lot easier for trans and gender diverse people to change their birth certificates around that. And there's a commitment to look at religious exemptions or religious freedom, which we'll talk about a bit more too. And Victoria's just waiting to see what happens with the mess that's going on in the Commonwealth. We understand that community groups, peer support groups need to be supported, and we've put a lot of money and support into those groups, including Switchboard, which is our telephone counselling service. We saw a big blip increase during the postal survey of people that needed all of those services. It's so important. And as a representative of the government, I can't go out and talk to the groups that I do unless we're doing the work inside government. So every government department now has a Pride network. That's like an ally and LGBTI group. And we march in the Pride March. We're one of the largest, Victorian Government is one of the largest contingents marching, and all the agencies of government march as well. And WorkSafe marched last year, and I said to the CEO, would you do that again? She said, that was amazing. I've never been clapped for being a public servant before in my life. She said, at one place I walked past, the crowd started chanting, OH&S, OH&S. I'm like, okay. Created an instant ally. But it's really important that the visual, and we know we have people coming to Victoria to be part of the Victorian government because they are an employer of choice around this space. One of the things that I'm really proud of is the state apology. We were the first state to apologise for the criminalisation. For many of you, I think most of you, this was illegal in your lifetimes. It wasn't just for gay men. 2 lesbians were convicted of gross indecency. They were holding hands on a tram, people. That's what they were doing. So we ruined people's lives. We absolutely ruined people's lives. One of the gentlemen said to me, Commissioner, this has just been an enormous day of healing. I'm just sorry my mother's not here to see this. You know, we ruin people's lives. We name them, shame them. We have the most amazing governor in Victoria, Linda Dessau, the Honourable, Her Excellency, and she ran the first Ida Hobbit event. Ida Hobbit, you always get to choose your friends, not your acronyms. International Day, it does sound like something out of Lord of the Rings, doesn't it? International Day against homophobia, biphobia, intersex and transphobia. Yes. You can see I've said that a few times. Okay. Now, today when I got here, I did notice the very warm welcome, and I was welcome everybody to Common Dreams. What a small thing that is, but what a huge thing it is for the LGBTI community not to be welcomed as ladies and gentlemen. Enormous. If you take nothing else out of my speech, you know, Lyle Shelton from the Australian Christian Lobby can still feel welcomed by that welcome. Nobody is left out. It's how do we include everyone without excluding anyone? When the governor got up there and welcomed everyone to Government House, it was literally 6 or 6.5 minutes of clapping and cheering before she could continue with the rest of her presentation. It was the most extraordinary night. I'll let you in a little secret. They invite 1,100 to Government House and 800 come. And it has a capacity of 900. And I said, I don't think you better invite 1,100. No, Commissioner, we've done this for 10 years. It's, you know, no. Well, guess how many people turned up? 990. Because it was so significant. People cancelled air flights, and because it's not just about tolerance, it's about actual celebration of our community. You know, so important to be there and to be part of it. Yeah, there were a few pictures of gay men in front of the Queen that perhaps didn't need to be on the internet, and the lesbians found the pool room and helped themselves to a game, but generally we behaved ourselves quite well. Every time I've gone to Government House, if everyone has ever been to something like that, you get this bold, gold emboldened invitation, and it used to have my old name on it, Gender Ms, and you just give it to the police officer and they'd say, I'm sorry sir, this is not your invitation. So you have to get out my licence, have a whole awkward incident. And I said to the governor, look, you're going to have 1,000 people, can we not put, you know, pronouns and things on? First time in Government House that you just came with your name, and you know, we had people down there greeting everybody, and everybody got in without any confusion, which was great. We're building the first Pride Centre in Victoria, the Equality State. Small little building, but it's so important. This is where our archives are going to be housed, where our community services, AIDS Council, Switchboard, Midsummer Queer Film, Minus 18, all the groups that have not had permanent homes in our community. It's going to be, and we're going to march past that every year in our Pride March. Sport, this is an area that I didn't sign up for, but I'm just sort of stuck with the athlete that I am. That's me dropping a puck. You have to say that very carefully. Can I say? Even when you're out on the ice, and you have to walk out on this very thin bit of red. Anyway, everybody's doing a pride round. Ice hockey, football. It started with the AFL. I know for people who know me in the crowd, and there's a few, I have no interest in sport. I have no idea that 6 points between the two poles and nothing. And here I was working with the AFL on their Pride game. And it was just the funniest thing. I had no idea the rules of the game. They thought the rainbow had 7 colours. It was just a cultural clash. But, you know, and we ended up with Kinky Boots performing at the football, and we had an after party. And I remember the CEO of St Kilda going, we don't have after parties. I'm like, what? Why don't you have after parties? Our community has an after party for everything. So I've done ice hockey, pride, water polo, yes, I had to get in the water with trans community and Olympians. Recently, Pride roller derby on skates. And most recently, I played a demonstration game at the Australian Open. So, give me strength. Anyway, there you go. Why is it important? Let me tell you the reason for that slide. It's because 70 or 80% of our community has been excluded from sport. I was excluded from sport, and the health benefits, and if you're in a rural community and you're excluded from sport, the isolation in that is really important. So that's why I do it. I tell myself every time I put on a jersey. Toilets. Somebody called me on the ABC radio the Commissioner for Toilets once. I'm just like, the Commissioner for Toilets. Well, there you go. They'll put that on my tombstone. But I do a lot of work around the Australian standards in toilets. And you might say, why is this important? Toilets seems to freak everybody out. I don't know what it is about toilets. It seems to be the big thing that every toilet in your home is gender neutral. Is it not? Unless Dad has a particular toilet that you leave for a few hours every Saturday. I mean, really, we do, but it seems to be this phenomenon. For me, as a gender diverse, gender neutral person, I'm always looking for a safe toilet. Mostly because now I'm the Commissioner, I can't say the things I used to say when I had an interaction with someone in the bathroom. That's unpleasant. And, this particular day, I'll tell you this, and I am going to watch time. Last story, promise. But I was doing a very big corporate gig, 700 people, rushing, thought, I better find a bathroom. Could not find an all-gender, all-ability disabled toilet, which is the one I mostly use. Make a decision, quick, rush into the women's toilet. Sure enough, there's a woman in there at the sink, says, sorry sir, this is the women's toilet. Awkward conversation. 5 minutes later, get introduced to her as the CEO who's introducing me on stage. Get to this slide in my presentation. She can't look at me, I can't look at her. That international global company has gender neutral toilets in every single workplace. Yeah. Okay. So let me rush through some of these. The rural and regional is really important in the work that we do. People ask me, are people in the country more homophobic, biphobic, transphobic? No, but you have to have the conversations. Here's a little video about how we did that.
With the roadshow, what happened was, I think the policy leapt off the page into a bus and came to visit town,
Hopping in a bus, driving from one rural or regional area to another, getting together for community dinners, meeting with stakeholders and providing information, education and opportunities for change was really powerful.
We felt really heard and we felt really supported, and I think that was for the first time we had a direct ear to government, and it was such a great moment for us, I think, as a community.
And it's country people are being included in the conversation, and that's good stuff.
When the roadshow comes through the Bull Oak area, it brought the whole of the Bull Oak together, and now we've networked and we've established that group.
The roadshow gave me a forum to seek some safe, secure and genuine assistance.
Honestly, the roadshow's changed my life. I wouldn't have Pride Hub without it. I wouldn't be in the position in the community that I'm in without it. It's changed my life completely, and I couldn't be more grateful for that.
I think it's going to save lives, to be very honest with you.
In my family circumstance, it really was the difference between survival and non-survival.
They've started to build the capacity of people to be able to do this work themselves, and I think that is the most amazing thing they could have done.
I also think that it's opened up a new dialogue and a new age in some of regional Victoria where our community feel like part of the community.
This roadshow has opened so many doors, and I think those doors aren't going to be shut again easily.
Thank you. So our community is everywhere, not just in rural and regional Victoria, which is very close to my heart, but in every community. So in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, which I've talked about, the disability and elder community. And within disabilities, often people say, you know, Commissioner, we don't even, you know, people don't even talk about sexuality, you know, heterosexuality for people with a disability, let alone homosexuality. So, you know, we've got a lot of work to do in that space. And of course, with my elders, we've funded a number of things, including the Coming Out Ball. If you've got half an hour, do Google that. There's a great documentary on the Coming Back Out Ball. I had an 85-year-old lesbian say to me, this is the very first event I've ever been out truly as myself. So important for seniors who, people tell me as you get older you feel, you can't just feel invisible, but in our community you can go back into the closet. And that's particularly terrible if you're in an aged care facility. I often talk to CEOs of aged care facilities who say, we just don't have any LGBTI people here. And I said, how many do you have? 100 people. I said, you've got at least 10. Go find them. How do we do that? Get rainbow accredited, get organised, put up a flag for Ida Hobbit. Surprise, surprise, they turn up. But we can't expect that seniors in our community will feel comfortable coming out, particularly when they've had a life of discrimination. In the multicultural space, you know, I remember, you know, through all those years of listening in the Uniting Church and the year of discernment and the year of this and the year of procrastination and the year of everything else. I don't know how many years there were, but, you know, I often got told, no, we can't go and, you know, we can't talk to the multicultural communities about this stuff. It's not culturally sensitive. Rubbish. There are LGBTI young people from multicultural communities who are dying of suicide and self-harm because of a racist belief that we can't talk about sexuality and gender diversity. We are everywhere, and it's important. It's really important that we get over ourselves, and we do it culturally sensitively, obviously. And I'm very fortunate to work with Australia's only out gay imam in Victoria and a whole lot of communities that I work with. Family violence, this sort of came out of the Family Violence Royal Commission. Family violence in our community is running the same as heterosexual cisgender family violence. Trans community higher and bisexual women higher than heterosexual women. But in Victoria right now, if you seek services for family violence, you know, 10 of those are in faith-based services. And right now in Victoria, as it is in every part of Australia, those faith-based services have the right to discriminate and turn you away. Now, we didn't get the legislation through, and maybe we'll work together and we'll get that changed. But this is what religious freedom and exemption means. And so this is what I did about it, and there's a small quick little video. Well, this has come out of one of the recommendations from the Royal Commission into Family Violence that noted that faith-based organisations that are funded by state government can actually legally discriminate against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, diverse, intersex communities. So today, it's very exciting. Today, 10 of those faith-based organisations are signing up on a plaque, on a statement, to say that LGBTIQ people are really welcome to their service.
In our game of delivering services, we have a history of doing harm in the name of doing good. That, to my mind, is actually our biggest risk in community services.
I have my own religious background, and you know, I think a lot of the queer community has experiences where you know, where we're not welcomed by religious institutions or organisations.
We're placing ourselves front and centre in a statement. We're not going to assume that people think, aren't they inclusive?
It not only makes sense for us to provide inclusive, non-discriminatory services, it's our mandate. It's the core of who we are. Let us pray for a time when discrimination will be blotted out from our world, and a time when true peace will dwell among us.
Get on board, is what I'd say to other faith-based organisations. You know, it's not enough to think that you provide inclusive services. You've really got to demonstrate that all the way through. You've actually got to talk to people about their experience and learn from those experiences, and that's been a really important part of our journey.
what we're seeing today is that people on the ground delivering services want to do the right thing. They want to provide quality services to the whole community, and that means welcoming in LGBTI people. So we see people of faith making real positive change while we wait for the law to catch up, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
It's not just about putting up a flag and making a statement. These organisations are actually making a commitment to actually improve their service, understand, look at rainbow accreditation within their organisations. Somebody asked me how I got 10 faith-based organisations to do that. I told the first one the other 9 had already signed up. No, just no. I'm only half kidding. Okay. Yeah. So for the last third of this, let's just unpack some of these issues a little bit. Conversion ideology. Certainly something that I've been affected by, not in the Uniting Church, just from my Uniting Church friends to know, but in the Assemblies of God Church. And many young people, particularly before they come out, who are people of faith, explore all these things, and they're incredibly, incredibly dangerous. I'm certainly a lucky survivor because Reverend Dorothy McRae McMahon found me, saw me, and told me it was not a choice between my spirituality and my sexuality. But that's not how it is for everybody. So in Victoria, we're really lucky to have a Premier who has decided to do some work in this space. And the Health Services Commissioner has done a review into conversion therapy. It's alive and well in Victoria, which means it's alive and well right across Australia and globally. Interestingly, or scarily, right now, or he's just left Sydney, while I'm standing here, Bill Johnson from the Bethel congregation in America has just been to Sydney. This is a global, again, another global phenomenon, a movement, a growing movement. They absolutely believe in miracles. For our community, that miracle is that they can turn everybody cisgender and heterosexual. And that is not outlawed in Australia, and that just this weekend just gone has been happening right here in Sydney. So if that's not a wake-up call, there's so much going on in this space. Here's a slide you may not have seen. If we come to the workshops, we can unpack this a lot more. Here's Israel Folau on the front of Star Observer, the gay magazine, on 2014, promoting and supporting the Birmingham Cup, which is the gay rugby club, and helping to stand out homophobia. So our community feels an incredible amount of betrayal. I can't imagine what this pressure this man has been under by his father's church. And I have grace and sympathy for what he must be struggling with through this, but the impact it's having on our community is extraordinary. Religious freedom, well, again, we can unpack this, because I'm not going to go all day. We can unpack this more in the workshops, but really, I think what we've experienced through the postal survey is just an inkling of what's coming in relation to the fight that we'll need to have in this space. So what's Victoria doing? At least in Victoria, I have money to set up an advisory group. I'm going to work you hard in the workshops for some of your views on resources and materials in plain language for ministers, for pastors, for people, clergy in schools, in churches and in hospitals, around understanding the impacts of conversion ideology on people. It's really going to be important. Because during the postal survey, we particularly saw a trigger warning on some of these things, people, but we saw such an increase in hate speech and stigma and hatred towards our community. These were some of the posters that came up. I'll go through this pretty quick. They were targeted in every language. Okay, it was really quite horrific. In our community, and for many in Australia, people will know exactly where they were. I can tell you exactly where, I'm going to show you exactly where I was in a minute, exactly where you were when you found out the results. You know, it's like, where were you when the towers came down? Where were you when JFK died? Like, where were you at the postal survey? Hands up if you can tell me exactly where you were when you heard it. There you go. So that's made an impact in itself. But as I've said, you know, we lost people. We lost vulnerable people who were already suffering through suicide and self-harm during that time. So I just thought I'd finish on a couple of things. Somebody actually caught the moment that I heard the postal survey results. Now I just need to give you the setting here. I'm down at the State Library. There's about 10,000 people. My daughter's decided to stay out of school to take care of her mothers, as she said. She wanted to be with us. If the answer was yes, Bill Shorten was getting on the stage. If the answer was no, I was getting on the stage. So have a look at the relief. It's my last little video.
817,247, representing 61.6%. No responses, 4,873,987, representing 38.4% of key responses. That's 38.4% of key responses were no.
I had absolutely no idea what I was going to say if I had to go back on stage. Let me just say this. There was a postal survey that should never have happened. A majority of people should never, and you all know this, but should never decide a minority's human rights. And should never, ever have happened. So let me finish on a happy note. So we got married. Yay! There's a bit, if you look close, there's a bit of name dropping there. That's the Melbourne Gay and Lesbian Choir, and Eleni doing some of the sermon there. It was an incredible, and many of you have been to gay weddings or same-sex weddings, or we just call them weddings really. But I hope we can just call them weddings soon. But anyway, when you get to that part that says, you know, marriage is between two people, it was 3.5 minutes before we could keep going because people were clearing and clapping and crying at our wedding. It was extraordinary, and yeah. Wow. There you go. So our story is I met Kay through the Uniting Church, and when this was all going on, and of course we got the right, and then all of a sudden we hear that, you know, the church is going to review this decision, and this is right when we've, you know, booked, and we said, nope, we've had the church up to here, we're going to get married in a hall, you know. Sunday after the Assembly's decision that churches could marry, we rolled over in bed and went, who are we kidding? Of course we want to get married in church. And we booked a church. Imagine that, people. Then you find out that maybe you won't be allowed to get married in that church. It's like, can the church actually hit us any harder? Can it go any lower? And we still got married in the church. We filled that church with 350 people. So many queer people that struggled to even walk in the door came to that church. So many people said to me, Ro, if church was like this every day with clapping and cheering and celebration and love and singing and worship and praise, I would come back to church. Yeah. Just one more because I can. Thanks, everybody.
How'd I go with timing? Well, I think we could have listened all day, couldn't we? But Ro's been very disciplined, so thank you. You've made us laugh, you've touched our hearts, you've shown us what a change you've made and how that has benefited individuals. And I've seen evidence of the changes that you've created there, and we had a conversation about that earlier. So I think you need to remember that the evidence of those changes is very apparent in the lives of so many individuals. So we've got just a few minutes. Are there questions? So hands in the air. Yeah.
Hello. Oh, there I am. Thank you. That was fantastic. I have been madly texting the minister at our church saying, what are we going to do? Because we're definitely an inclusive community, but I don't think we've really let people know. And I guess I wanted to ask, what's the best way? Can you give me some ideas on the best way for us to let people know the doors are open, we've got open arms? Give me some ideas.
Shout about it. Advertising gay newspapers. Put your rainbows up. But make sure you don't put a rainbow up until everyone in the community is supportive. The last thing you want to do is get LGBTI people to come along and them have a negative experience. Get your bathroom sorted, and so that everybody feels welcome. Get your language right, you know, I'm sure it is, but make sure you just tweak a few things around the edges, and don't be surprised if they don't break your doors down. But they'll be watching, you know, and it might be 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, you know, but people will come. No worries.
Yes, Rose, thank you very much for that. As a former educator or continuing educator, however you like to put it, I'm very concerned about teachers, in particular Catholic schools, which are very conservative. And if you're teaching religion, you are required to teach that sacrament marriage is between a man and a woman. How are you addressing issues with, say, the Queensland Catholic Education Commission or Brisbane Catholic Education Commission, things like that? How do you do that to make it safe for many of our students who do come from same-sex marriage situations?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, my powers do stop at the border, so I am the Victorian. But I think I
mean in general.
I know. But what I hope that I'm doing, I hope we're doing in Victoria, is being the first state. We are the first state to have every single state school, and I understand not every Catholic and independent school, every single state school in Victoria, including special schools, is now signed up as a safe school in Victoria. Every single school. Some better than others, clearly, but they cannot discriminate against LGBTI people, and they certainly can't be talking about, obviously state schools different to Catholic schools, and I have very, very limited impact in independent and Catholic schools, other than to say there is an enormous black market of safe schools material that goes into Catholic and independent schools between the teachers. An enormous black market of which I encourage vigorously. And working with faith groups to try and show them the importance of this. And there are so many Catholic and Anglican schools that are doing it really well. And so what I try to do is showcase and highlight that, you know, an Anglican school in Victoria can be a safe school and the sky doesn't fall down. Yeah. And that there are choices and there are really good state schools to send your kids. Yeah.
So I think there was one last question over here. John, in the corner, John.
My name is Ken from Queensland, and I want to commend you on a brilliant presentation. You've covered all aspects of the LGBTIQ, and I wish we can have you up in Queensland. I think you'll do miracles up there. I am a chaplain with the aged care and the general public health, and also with the university. There is still a lot of discrimination against aged care, and you touched on it, and it was great to see what you're doing in Victoria. How can you replicate the work you're doing there to the other parts of the country?
Sure. Ken, have faith. I recently had 2 graduates from Queensland Government come and shadow me for 2 weeks. They're quite interested they'll be setting up an LGBTI task force or committee in Queensland, and there's some things moving in Queensland. May slow down a little bit after the federal election, but they were certainly gung-ho before that. Aged care, believe it or not, under the Abbott government, this is a true story, it became illegal to discriminate for LGBTI people in aged care. It's the only section of support services is aged care. Not that many people know about it. There was 1 year of training that went through the aged care sector, but you know, there are laws to protect. What we need to do, of course, is make sure that training happens for the aged care sector. And that's really, you know, fundamentally about advocacy and supporting that to happen. There's a case study not that long ago of a woman who was put into aged care by some pretty unfriendly children that she had, and she was told that she had to live as the gender she was assigned at birth 40 years ago, not the gender she'd been living for the last 40 years. And this stuff, you know, it's really for the providers to uncover and make sure that people are supported. Right now, people put down their photos and clean up their houses before home help come because they feel like they can't be their authentic selves because they may be discriminated against, whether that's perception or reality. So what I have a lot of home care and disability home care and aged care providers do is just wear rainbow lanyards, wear rainbow badge, make sure that people know that they can, you know, leave their photos up of their loved ones and be their authentic selves. And it's a real journey, and we have to be advocates in all the sectors. Yeah.
Time's up, unfortunately, but we're inspired to keep learning, to keep the conversations going with our friends and our organisations, to keep acting, but also largely to keep celebrating. So keep the celebration going and keep the celebration learning. Thank you, Ro. Thank you, everyone.